Okay guys, let's talk fountain pens. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different fountain pens. Not one of them is the same as any other. I do have some other duplicates here because there's some pens that I love that I want to use different coloured inks in them, so I have more than one. It's a bit like a pair of shoes. If you find a really great pair of shoes, you buy 1, 2 or 3 pairs of them. I've got, I think, 4 pairs of one set of shoes because I just love them. They work for me. So as you can see, we've got lots of different colours, lots of different thicknesses, and also heights of the pens as well, or length of the pens. Now these ones are all pretty much the same, and then these last 3 come down in size to the teeny tiny. We've got different types of materials. We've got wood, metal, wood and metal. We've got plastic and metal. All brass, which is one of my favourites. And each of these pens will have different ways that you fill up the inks. And I will go through all of these bits. So, let's put these away for now. Okay, first of all, let's look at nibs. There are lots of different versions of nibs. Now the nib is this bit here. This is the nib. Okay? Now you can get, starting off with an extra fine, well this is an extra fine hooded nib, so you can't even see the nib, so that's probably not a very good example. Let's find a, so this is an extra fine nib, and if you turn it sideways you can see that it's very, very straight and there isn't really anything going on there, whereas this is a medium nib. Again, they look different. This one's rose gold, this one's silver. They look different, and this one has more of a little ball at the end. So we've got those. This is a fine nib that is gold and silver, and again you can see it has a little bit of a ball in comparison. That one's very flat, whereas that one's got a little bit of a ball at the edge, tip here. Now I'm not going to use this one as an example because this one is actually faulty, and I'll have a look at that one in a minute. So we've got this one is also a medium, so I do want to show you that one. And actually you can see the ball on the edge just a little bit more predominantly on that one. So we've got 2 different mediums. We've got a fine, that's another fine. But what I do want to show you here, especially with these, that's a medium, that's a fine, but look at the size of the nib difference. Quite a big difference in size, and these are 2 different makes of pen, and one's medium, one's fine, but again I will show you not all fines will have the same width line. They won't all look the same, so it's something to be aware of. Okay, let's get some paper. Just going to move those to one side. Now I'm left-handed, so I do write with my paper on the side, and I just put this board down here so that any oils from my hands don't get on the paper. Okay, so this is, I'm going to write bigger than I usually do so that you can see. So this is a medium nib, and this is a Calico is the brand. I'm just writing that down for my own reference, so I'm just going to put the lid back on that one. Now this is also a medium nib, and this is the Lamy. Okay, so straight away I can see that this Lamy medium is the width of the line is a little bit wider than the calico. Now, this is a Moonman. This is a much bigger nib. It's physically, in size, it's physically bigger. And it is marked up as a fine. So, this is a fine nib from Moonman. Okay, so you can see that it is not as wide as the mediums. And then we've got the Hongdian, which is a fine. It's marked up as a fine. This is also a fine nib, and it's the Hongdian. Now, to me, that is more fine than the Moonman fine. So to me, I would kind of probably say that's more like an extra fine. Now, I do have an extra fine. This is the hooded nib, so you can't actually see it, but it is advertised as an extra fine nib. And so this is an extra fine nib. And this is the Jinhao 51. I will link all the pens that are used in the description. Now, looking at that straight away, this extra fine is wider than the Hongdian fine. So as you can see, unless you stick to the same brand, you're going to get some variance with the sizes of your nibs. Now, do I have any... okay, so the Moonman, which is marked up as a fine. I also have a mini Moonman, which is also marked up as a fine, and I'm just going to put this under here. This is a fine nib. And that's also a Moonman, and straight away you can see that this is much finer than that one. So I would say that this is more like a fine to medium. Okay. So something to bear in mind if you're looking to get your first fountain pen, if you are thinking of getting one for a gift for somebody, you need to think about, especially if you or somebody has never used a fountain pen before, you have to consider how you write with a normal pen. Let me just find a normal, let's get a, this is a normal ballpoint pen, which I don't tend to use anymore. I exclusively use fountain pens. So just make sure that works. So personally, I've got very small hands and I write very small. So I'm going to write how I would usually write, and you might not be able to read it because it is so small. So I'm just going to put, this is a ballpoint pen. And I am left-handed, which can make a difference here, and we will discuss that in a bit. So I personally write a little bit differently depending on what pen I use. So I've got quite small handwriting, but that's quite a fat, it's a 1.0 millimeter. It's not really a nib, but yeah, it's much fatter. But if I go and find my, this is a gel, but it's only 0.38 mil, so it's considerably smaller than a standard ballpoint. And this is how I write with a 0.38 mil. So I have little handwriting, so when I'm using my, let's go for a different one, when I'm using my pens, my fountain pens, typically this is the size that I will write. Now that's an extra fine, so that's kind of, it's one of the finest ones I have. But just to show you, so this pen, which wrote this, is identical to this pen. I bought them from the same person, and they're both extra fine nibs. But actually, this one is a bit more fine. So you can get some variance between the same pen and the same, like they're both identical, they're exactly the same. So it's something to be aware of. Now, I don't have very many medium nibs because I don't write this big. I do have a couple of lammies, which are quite wide lines because they've got shimmer inks in them, which don't go down so well in the finer nibs. So if I decide I want to write a letter to somebody, I'm gonna have to, if I try to write the same thing in this, you'll see it all becomes a bit of a mess and it's hard. It's hard to read. Let's see if I can show that a bit better for you. So we've got our medium nibs here. We've got our fine nib for Moonman, but actually I'd say it's more of a fine to medium because this is also a fine nib and it's definitely a bit finer than that one. And then if we come down to, so with a ballpoint pen, I kind of write about this size, but with a much finer pen, my handwriting is actually teeny, teeny, tiny. And with a fine fountain pen, this is kind of the size it is. Oh, see, I'm smudging this. This hasn't dried yet. Now I've tried to write the same thing in the same size with a medium nib, and it doesn't look as good. So you would have to consider that if you have little handwriting and you use a medium nib, you might have to write a bit bigger. Let's see how big we'd have to go to produce the same sentence. Okay, that's better. So that's easier to read, but it is considerably bigger. So it's something to be aware of. Different brands of pen. Some pens will give you the option. For example, the Lammies, I think you can have a extra fine, a fine, a medium, a broad, which is a much, much thicker one, and a lot of pens also do a bent nib. I don't personally have any of those. It's not something I've tried yet, but I think they're a bit more specialised, the bent nibs. Okay, so nibs. Got any questions? Pop them below. I'll try and answer them for you. So that's nibs. Let's put these away and tidy this up a little bit. Okay, nibs, we've looked at nibs. Hi guys, thanks for watching my video. This did actually start out as one single video all about fountain pens for people that maybe have never experienced fountain pens, and just some considerations to take into account if you wanted to delve into the world of fountain pens, or perhaps purchase a fountain pen for a friend or a loved one. Yeah, that video ended up being over 2 hours long, nearly 2.5 hours, so I had to split it down into smaller chunks. So that was nibs, and the different sorts of nibs that you can get in fountain pens. And next up we will be talking about ink filling, so stay tuned. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.